The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, my name is Carlo Tapia. I'm a product marketing manager at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to the eFolder Partner Chat. This webinar series brings together leading eFolder partners for business-oriented discussions. Today's topic is the myths and realities of data protection and Office 365. Today we are joined by Shawn Walsh, CEO of Paradigm Computer Consulting. So great. Before we go through the agenda, let's cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel. We also make copies of the slides available to those who registered for the event. With over 492 people registered for today's session, we've put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event by either streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Questions are strongly encouraged throughout. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit as we go along and we will try to address your questions on the fly. Today's presentation follows a logical flow. First, I'm going to review some of the big market forces that are transforming the cloud and technology landscape. Next, I'll introduce eFolder Cloudfinder and look at the key features of the solution. Shawn will then talk about his deployment of Cloudfinder and how he has converted his client's Office 365 instance into a profit opportunity. Before finishing up, we'll cover some core use cases of Cloudfinder. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end of today's discussion, but again, please ask questions as we go along. Great. Now let me introduce our guest and partner, Shawn Walsh. Shawn Walsh started Paradigm Computer Consulting in 1994. Shawn has worked for the Milford Police Department as Detective Sergeant in charge of the Detective Division and managed their IT department. Shawn is a teacher on many levels and has taught computer crime investigation and computer science classes. Shawn is a Bachelor of Science from Franklin Pierce College with a major in management and a minor in information systems. He's a Microsoft certified small business specialist. Shawn, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you, Carlo. I appreciate you having us on here.
Great. Well, let's dive right into it. You know, Shawn, you've been an eFolder partner for some time, but maybe you can talk the audience through Paradigm Computer Consulting and what it is that you guys do and what makes you special.
Sure. As you mentioned, I founded the company in 1994. We started out like a lot of solution providers, building white boxes, started with just myself. We quickly learned that we wanted to be in the business-to-business space and not in the retail space. We started out doing Novell networks for businesses with white box machines. As the market forces moved towards Microsoft, we shifted to be a Microsoft shop and started reselling brand name systems. Primarily, we are an HP partner for servers and workstations these days, but we've been through several. Around 2004, we got to the point where we would come in on Monday and we'd have a flood of calls of emergencies, and we'd start canceling the appointments we made the weeks before and running out, like in the fireman role, putting out the fires. And I thought, geez, there's really got to be a better way to do this. And around that time, I was introduced to managed services. We had just moved into ConnectWise for our managing the front office, and we then adopted Kaseya for our back-end tool, and we moved to a pretty straightforward managed services platform. And we have operated that way ever since. During that time, we have tried several different backup solutions. I struggled with many of the other backup partners that have been out there, some who are still around, some who have disappeared. We got to the point where we brought it in-house and we're doing it ourselves. I had approached Jan at one of the conferences, and she asked me to give them a shot, and I said, well, we're going to try this one more time, and we went with eFolder, and we have been with eFolder ever since. Since 2004, we've expanded the company. We have 2 offices in New Hampshire. We have an office in Columbus, Ohio, Tampa, Florida, and Roanoke, Virginia. The core of our business we work with law firms, financial services, and medical. The common denominator being that most of our clients have some type of regulatory compliance needs. And that stems from my original background in computer forensics and IT security.
Right. That's a great summary of what it is that you guys do. You know, I'm sure a lot of people on the call can relate to your transition from really like a break fix or fireman model into fully managed services. And the fact that you have so many clients, you know, it seems like the majority of partners deal with several different verticals, but for you, meeting regulatory compliance, whether that's on a data retention or privacy or security front, is probably something that we'll talk about later in the presentation, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So great. So you know, let's talk about some of the market forces that are going on. You know, what is driving small and medium-sized businesses today? So this is likely not news to anyone on the webinar, but you know, seeing the numbers in front of you is actually pretty staggering. The fact is, people are moving to the cloud, and there are tectonic shifts underway in this transition. So you know, if we're looking at the numbers, by 2018, total spending on cloud services will be $180 billion. $13 billion will be spent on cloud computing and managed hosting services. And so, you know, what's basically happening is we're seeing there's always this trickle-down effect, right, where the big players adopt the latest technology, but cloud is so pervasive with small and medium-sized businesses. And every day, more and more managed service providers are experiencing this reality, and trying to figure out how they adapt, whether it's offering managed services that are cloud applications, or adding on services, but really, you know, trying to maintain control over their environments. You know, let's take a look at some other numbers on this next slide. 80% of businesses today have reported using some form of SaaS application in their organization. So when you think about, you know, even the applications in your own business, whether those are Office 365 or Salesforce or Box or Dropbox or Google Apps, any one of these services could be considered a cloud application or a SaaS application. So it's you know, it's pretty alarming just to think how many businesses, how important cloud applications are to the day-to-day functions of a business. You know, the fact is that this will be the first year that more business data is running through cloud than it is on-premise, and this trend is going to continue. So you know, definitely shouldn't be surprising for anybody on the call, but just want to throw those numbers out there. Shawn, do you have anything to add, anything that you're seeing with your clients or any trends that you're witnessing?
No, the fact is there's a certain amount of cloud in almost every deployment we do now. I think we all know that it's really not a matter of if things go to the cloud, it's a matter of when, you know, and there's a lot of people predicting that 10 years from now, everything we do is going to be cloud-based. But we are definitely seeing that trend with our clients, particularly with things like file sharing. I mean, you guys, backup box.net. We use Anchor internally and with our clients. You know, today is a great example. For me, I'm up in New Hampshire getting pounded by this snowstorm, and we have our entire staff operating remotely from home using Office 365, using Link to communicate. We're accessing our files through Anchor. We're using Terminal Server, which is hosted in a data center, as well as our remote offices using voice over IP to communicate. So, you know, just the fact that we can operate at 100% efficiency despite the fact that you can't get to the office really shows where we're going with this.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually why I guess the next slide on the screen here, it really answers why this why this transition is taking place. Right. If we look at Office 365 as an example of really disruptive suite of business productivity applications, the fact is, for $5 a month, your clients or your own company can unlock so many business productivity applications, whether that's Word, the whole Microsoft Office suite, Outlook, OneNote, you mentioned Link, and for $5, it's the cloud is not only made software more accessible, it's made software more affordable. And so if you're a small or medium-sized business owner today, especially if you're just starting out, and you have to make a decision whether you're going to have an on-premise, Exchange server, or you're going to adopt Office 365. In a lot of ways, just looking at if we're looking at prices, it's pretty obvious what decision you're going to make. And so, businesses are unlocking this whole set of functionality for pretty reasonable prices. And so, the question that most people on the call are probably asking themselves, or should be asking themselves, is if this transition is taking place, if small, medium-sized businesses are adopting these suites or these cloud applications that unlock so much value, how can partners add value to these deployments, and how can they bundle in managed services? So this is something that we're going to address. Later in this call. But Shawn, maybe this is a good time to talk about some of the reasons why your client decided to go with Office 365. What was involved in that decision-making process?
Well, the client that we transitioned, and the first one that we put into this service, is a large advertising company. And we had debated back and forth with them whether we were going to keep a premise-based Exchange server. And I have to say, I mean, I was reluctant to go to Office 365 initially, and I hadn't been a great fan of Office 365, and mainly with my background, I like to have control of things, and I felt like we were going to be giving up a lot of control, which discounted our value proposition. After talks with the client, they decided that they did want to go to Office 365 despite some of the limitations, and we moved them into it, and I still wasn't 100% comfortable with the move, and I felt like there was something missing from it. And it was funny because I got introduced to Cloudfinder when we attended an eFolder dinner at an event we were there, and again, Jan was doing a presentation on the product, and immediately, as soon as she brought it up and she showed me the functionality, I had the light bulb go off, and I said, "Holy cow! This is the piece I was missing. If I had this deployed at that client, my comfort level would be significantly higher." And it was funny because I flipped open my laptop while she was doing her presentation, and I sent out an email to my point of contact, and was describing what I was seeing from them, and Jan came over and gave me a hard time saying, "Hey, what are you doing checking email while I'm talking?" And I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "I just sold a 100-seat deployment." And before she was done, I had the response back from the customer, which was, "Sounds like a no-brainer to me," and we immediately implemented it. So.
Yeah, and just to support why you would if we're looking at Office 365 specifically, I want to throw some statistics out there that should be, should hopefully raise, some light bulbs with the audience. But basically, we did an investigation of Office 365 and their data retention policies, and the results were alarming. Across multiple tiers, what we saw is that for emails, the retention is extremely limited. When you delete an email, that email is gone in 30 days. And if the only way that you will retain that for any longer is if you pay for archiving, if you pay for email archiving. And even then, if you're paying for this additional service, you're looking at the retention being capped at 60 days for a deleted email. So you think about sensitive emails and the types of emails that people send today and the information that's carried through that, you know, whether it's nefarious or innocent, there's sensitive corporate data that's being transferred through email. Same thing, you know, if we're looking at retention for OneDrive, so where people are hosting their files and the sensitive corporate data. The retention for OneDrive after a user profile is deleted for files is 14 days. So you have 2 weeks. Let's say you fire an employee or somebody quits the job, but they still have OneDrive. You have 14 days to basically retain their data in some way or other, get it transferred over to a different user profile. But in most cases, you know, you fire somebody, that's the last thing on your mind is how am I going to capture all of this user's data. So that's really this is a good time to move on to the next slide. You know, there's this big myth about the cloud, which is that data loss is a thing of the past. That once you move to the cloud, you no longer have to worry about retention. You don't have to worry about user error. You don't have to worry about hackers and you know, malicious activity. You don't have to worry about those things, and that's just frankly not true. That's frankly not true. You know, if we're looking at the screen, more than half of survey respondents say their organization currently transfers sensitive or confidential data in the cloud. Now, let's put that into context. 32% of businesses using cloud services have reported losing cloud data. So combining those two statistics, the fact that sensitive corporate data is being transferred in cloud applications and 32% of businesses are losing data due to cloud services, you know, you're bound to be missing cloud data or deleting cloud data or misplacing it or you know, there's so many possibilities for cloud data to be lost. So just to address, you know, we're not talking about outages and downtime here. We're not talking, you know, these data centers are built to be very robust. They have redundancy, you know, bad hardware. It's unlikely that you're going to lose data because of you know, an Amazon server going down. That's not what we're talking about. The biggest threat is user error. It's a system admin going in and deleting things. It's the employee that you fired or the employee that quit. It's deleting a user profile accidentally. Those are the primary sources of cloud data loss. And that's really what we're trying to speak to today. And most small and medium-sized businesses, the other thing to mention is that we have some people chiming in the comment section, mentioning, oh, well, I've heard that Box offers unlimited retention. The fact is you only really get unlimited retention if you're paying $35, $40 a month. You know, and each of these different applications, yes, there are tiers to the service, but most mom and pop shops, most small, medium-sized businesses are not going all in and buying the top tier. They're buying the most basic edition or the, you know, just above the basic edition, which has very limited retention. And so that's really, you know, those are your clients, and that's where partners have the big opportunity. Shawn, have your clients, you know, been experiencing data loss, or have you witnessed this yourself, maybe even in your own company?
Yeah, we've certainly seen it with some of the people using other file retention services. You know, knock on wood, we haven't had any major situations. But again, with this client that we moved into Cloudfinder, that was certainly a concern because they were used to having everything in-house and having total control of everything. More so than the concern of loss was the ability to find stuff, and the search functionality was actually a very attractive piece for them as well on that.
Right, right. So you know, we'll talk about Cloudfinder and all the functionality that you unlock in just a bit here. But really, just, you know, to summarize some of the things that we've talked about, there's two problems. There are two distinct challenges that the cloud has created. The first is that your clients face risk of data loss from cloud applications, though even if they don't know it or aren't aware of the risk yet. And so there's still some education that needs to be done. There's also the issue, you know, of cloud data sprawl. as you have more applications, there's more applications living in these different application silos. You have higher risks of data fragmentation as a result and data sprawl. And with so much data in the cloud, there's also a challenge, from the client perspective for legal discovery and compliance. If you have data living in different applications, if you have different people with access to that data, and sensitive data being transferred and available and accessible, it does make a challenge for legal discovery and compliance. On the business side, partners, people on the call today, the challenge that they face is that how do they add value to these cloud deployments? How do they add value to these cloud applications? And how do they build managed services on top of these different cloud applications? But in most cases, the good news is that in most cases, life doesn't get simpler for customers and clients when they move to the cloud. There's still lots that needs to be done. There's still somebody who needs to manage those different cloud applications. There's still adds, moves, and changes that need to be done. There's still support that needs to be had, and there's just so many opportunities to really add value to a cloud application, and that's how and by adding that value, partners can unlock a revenue stream. They can they don't necessarily have to fight with Microsoft or Google. They can add their own value and still, and pass that value on to their clients. So this is where Cloudfinder really fits in. Cloudfinder provides backup, search, and restore for leading cloud applications, including Office 365, Google Apps, Salesforce, and Box. And Cloudfinder, the value proposition is that it prevents data loss in the cloud, enables search across multiple cloud applications, and helps organizations control and manage their data better. Cloudfinder is a natural add-on for any managed service provider that's dealing with cloud applications. Whether they're deploying any one of these services, Cloudfinder is a natural fit. And for partners to succeed, they need to be able to control these different applications. They need to be able to provide, their clients with peace of mind, and be able to say to their clients, even if you move to the cloud, I'm going to be able to protect you. I'm going to be able to search across any one of your applications. I'm going to be able to restore data if it's ever lost or stolen or misplaced. I'm going to be able to do that, and that's really something that we think is invaluable. A picture tells a thousand words. So how does Cloudfinder actually work? Basically, we connect through the APIs of these different applications, and we pull the data and index it in our own data centers. And by indexing it in our data centers, we enable this whole set of functionality, including backup, search, restore, and reporting. And we back up all of our data to a second site. So, everybody on the call today knows about the importance of offsite backups, right? If we think about backup and disaster recovery, that's the whole premise, is that you have a server on site. You may even have a BDR appliance on site, but you back up to a second location. You have that data somewhere else. And that's what Cloudfinder offers. Not only do you have the data in the application itself, but you have a tamper-proof safe haven. And what that means is that the data can never be deleted. The data is always available for you to restore. And we'll talk more about each of these features. The other thing is you have search across cloud services. So no longer does data exist in silos. If your client is using, let's say they're using Google Apps and they have a Salesforce instance as well, you can search across both Google Apps and Salesforce. It's a unified search, it's a keyword search, and you'll see where the data actually resides. So we'll take a look at that feature. And in many ways, that's what helps mitigate the problem of data sprawl and really builds a control layer for the partner. Restores, the value of a restore is how quickly, not only just how quickly, but also how accurately you can perform a restore. And so Cloudfinder actually can perform point-in-time restores. So you can say, we want to go back to the specific date and time, and you can restore to different applications. So you can say, I want to restore this box file to my Salesforce instance, or vice versa. And you can actually witness the restore taking place and view where it stands in that process. And then reporting and corporate data governance. You're able to see what users are interacting with data. you have an overview of all of the data in a business environment. So let me take a look at some of the questions before we move any farther. So somebody asked on the previous slide about Office and 1 terabyte of storage, and I think they were referring to OneDrive. So Office actually recently announced for businesses unlimited storage for their OneDrive. So, pretty, that basically takes it off the table. And as we all know, Microsoft is making a big move in the small and medium-sized businesses. So, addressing that question. The other question is, does eFolder have data centers this is from Polydor. The question is, does eFolder have data centers in the United States? The answer is yes. We have a data center in Salt Lake City, Utah, Atlanta, Georgia, Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, and Amsterdam. And we have a new data center in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Which Cloudfinder data centers would store data for a UK company? We're assuming that the partner would want to point their data to the Amsterdam data center. So it's within the European Union. So great. So there are a few questions, but please invite the audience to keep chiming in. We'll try and address them as we go along. So really quickly, Cloudfinder before it was acquired, Cloudfinder was acquired by eFolder, and before it was acquired, Cloudfinder had a host of enterprise customers. So a lot of these are actually household names: 7-Eleven, Rovio, the creators of Angry Birds. We also have DDB, major worldwide advertising agency. So just providing some background for the Cloudfinder application. Let's go into key features and what Cloudfinder actually provides. So this is what Cloudfinder backs up for each of these services. And to put it simply, Cloudfinder backs up everything in an application. So when we're looking at Office 365, that's the entire productivity suite. That's your Exchange, that's your OneDrive, basically everything all in. That includes your emails, your files, your folders, your attachments, and all the metadata. Same thing with Google Apps, parity with Office 365. Your Gmail, your Google Drive, your calendar, contact sites, all of that is backed up. With Salesforce, you're looking at standard object, custom objects, emails, files, and actually in our latest release, we now back up metadata as well. And with Box, that's your files, folders, and metadata. So, as I said before, the simple way to put it is that Cloudfinder backs up just about everything in any one of these cloud applications. So a question here, we have a few people asking, are SharePoint sites backed up? So we have Mike and John asking the same question, is SharePoint backed up? At this time, what we back up is the user profiles in SharePoint. However, we do not back up the sites, SharePoint sites. So that's scheduled for a later release. It's definitely a roadmap feature, but at this time we do not back up SharePoint sites, only the user profiles. Great. Okay, so let's talk about SafeHaven Backup. So as I mentioned before, this is the importance of having an offsite backup. It's not enough to have data residing in the cloud application because that's where it can be tampered with. The SafeHaven Vault is this proprietary technology that we have. We actually back it up to our own data centers, and there's zero possibility of accidental deletion. So there's no way an administrator or user can actually go in and delete Cloudfinder data. There's no way. So you're never going to run into somebody emptying out the recycle bin. That's not a mistake that's going to happen with the SafeHaven Vault. Right now, Cloudfinder backs up to Amazon S3 storage architecture, so we back up to Amazon data centers, but that's quickly going to change. We're in the process now of moving all Cloudfinder data to eFolder data centers. And then just crazy numbers around durability and availability, 99.999%. eFolder, all of eFolder services are covered by 100% uptime cloud services SLA. So that's important to mention, something that you can extend your clients and say, yes, we offer an SLA around uptime. Okay, great. And instant full text search. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Shawn. But just to provide an overview for the audience, basically the way Cloudfinder works is because we index all of the data, you can run an instant full text search on any of it. And this is a keyword search, but you also have really great filters. So whether that's the title, the owner, the date, it could be the application itself. So you can say, I want to search for anything in Office 365, that happened between October and November, and was, owned by Sharon. So you're able to do that with Cloudfinder. You're able to set really rich filters, and that enables some really, really custom restores as well, because you're able to get so granular. You're able to restore on a very granular level as well. In-app restores, point-time restores, and user-level flexibility. So again, talking about the how quickly and how accurately can you restore data. That's the value of your restore. And so Cloudfinder gives you both, quickness and accuracy. You're able to say, I want to restore to this application. I want to restore to this user. I want to maintain the same folder structure. A good example would be, just as an example, we actually had individuals who were using Google Apps for a period of time, and we actually restored all of their data into Office 365, and we retained all of the calendar, the contacts, all of that information was retained. So it's great for migrations as well. So if your client, maybe they have a department that's using Google Apps, and they have another department that's using Office 365, you can actually migrate them. So a lot of questions coming in. Let me take a look. Okay, so one of the questions that came in from Jay is, do end users have their own independent access to the backup restore accounts for, or do managed service providers have to manage restores? The answer is, Jay, in most cases, what we see is the managed service provider is managing the entire Cloudfinder instance. So, they're performing the adds, moves, and changes. They're the ones that the client calls and says, I need this backed up. So there's not really a user interface for Cloudfinder. It's really designed for administrators. With that said, there are partners who have deployed this to larger organizations that have an IT person on staff. And so you can have the IT person be the administrator and charge for the actual deployment fees. So several ways to go about it. You can manage the Cloudfinder instance. You can have your clients manage the Cloudfinder instance. But from a user interface perspective, it's really designed for administrators.
And I would say, Carlo, that goes hand in hand with the way we deployed it with our client. They call us for the changes and they call us to do the administration, but this organization does have an IT manager on site, and we were able to give him administrative level access so he can access the things that he needs, but even in that case, he will still call into our office for any adds, moves, changes.
Yeah. I mean, there's several ways to go about it, but Shawn, as you testified, there's definitely an opportunity for managed service providers to be the administrator of their their clients' cloud applications. Some other questions coming in here. Okay, if data needs to be restored but the original cloud service is no longer used, can that data be retrieved in another form? This question is coming in from Stephanie. Stephanie, the answer is yes, the data will be retained. So one of the great features of Cloudfinder, again, going back to the tamper-proof safe haven, to the fact that data is never deleted in Cloudfinder, is that even if your client discontinues a cloud service, even if they have a user profile that's deleted, you will still have full access to that data. And you'll be able to restore any piece of, let's say a great example, somebody leaves the company and you cancel their Box account. And so backups will no longer be performed on that user. Basically, Cloudfinder will detect this user profile as inactive and there will be no more backups, but you'll still have access to all their data and you can restore to a different user, for example. So somebody leaves the company, you know, they're the engineer. They leave the company, a new engineer comes on. You have all their data. No matter what happens in the cloud application, you have all their data, and you can restore it to the new user. So a good use case there.
Hey, Carlo, we have a use case that we've found with our client in that they hire a lot of interns who come and go throughout the year, and they're constantly creating new accounts for those interns. And now they can create the account in Office 365, give it to them for a period of time, then they can delete the Office 365 account, but they can still do searches across the old accounts and the data that had resided in those in this interface, which that has definitely been a useful function for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're talking about continuity and the definition of continuity, you know, being able to basically seamlessly onboard somebody, and you know, whether it's a new intern and give them all the data to a new profile. No longer, it's almost ridiculous to have to. A lot of businesses, I think today, I've witnessed this myself. Is, you know, somebody leaves the company, but they're worried about retaining their data, so they just change all the back end stuff. They change the passwords. They, you know, configure Sarah to Sam, and they think that that's the best way to go about it, but really what you should be doing is canceling out Sarah's account, giving Sam a fresh start, and then just restoring, you know, migrating that data into Sam's account. And so that's a great use case. You know, some other questions: can you back up to a local NAS drive on a nightly basis? At this time, you cannot back up to local storage with Cloudfinder. It's you know, it's backed up to a second site, but not local. There's not an option to back up locally. You know, speaking about timing of backups, Cloudfinder actually performs a backup every 8 hours. So you get a backup at 8 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then at midnight. Shawn, does that sound about right? I think that's what I remember, but could you confirm?
Yeah, actually, I have one of my senior system engineers, Kevin Green, on the line with us here for answering just these kind of questions. Kevin, does that sound right to you?
Yes, that's correct. It backs up every 8 hours.
Oh, great. Well, Kevin, welcome. Yeah, thanks for confirming. But yeah, 3 times a day, you're getting a full backup of any of your cloud applications. So rich reporting and monitoring. So this is, you know, this is key when we talk about managing a cloud application. Cloudfinder gives you a detailed overview of your backup and any administrative user activities. We actually had somebody who was asking, you know, do you record all administrative activity for tracking and accountability purposes? And the answer is yes. You know, you can look at what restores were done, what exports were done. You can audit this data. So there is a rich administrative history, and you're getting a user activity log. You know, you also have license management. You can configure monitoring, and you also have monitoring of exports. So, as I mentioned before, so a lot of features for your own purposes and for your own administrative purposes.
I will say, Carlo, from my background, from a forensic standpoint, and having been involved in white-collar crime investigations with this, I really did like the auditing capabilities, and the fact that in here we can see who touched these emails while they've been within this product, and it gives a nice trail to be able to follow.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's great to hear, you know, from somebody with a security background that you know, Cloudfinder does offer that functionality that, you know, it meets those basic requirements of what an administrator should look for in any type of application like this.
Carlo, this is something that also came up when we were discussing Cloudfinder with our client. Our client wanted to be assured that their proprietary information was not going to be being routinely accessed for non-business reasons by Paradigm. And so the auditing, you know, we showed them the auditing capabilities of this, and they can actually log into this anytime they want and review the audit trail to satisfy themselves that Paradigm is not mistreating their data in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially when you're dealing in sensitive verticals like medical or legal or financial services, there does need to be, even if it's not enough to trust your administrator, you do have to have some proof that your administrator is not using your data in some nefarious way. And so that's definitely a value add too. I've actually seen partners, provide the reporting as sort of like an add-on feature. Like we can provide monthly reporting to you, and that's also something to consider. Is you can actually separate these different pieces of the product. You can say, we're gonna do the backups, but if you need a restore, this is how much it costs, or we can manage your restores, and this is how much it costs on a monthly basis. We can provide auditing, but this is how much it costs on a monthly basis. So lots of opportunities to upsell or just simply add value with your clients. Military-grade encryption is basically table stake for any product today, but for those of you who are security-oriented, this should meet most or satisfy most of your demands. Server-side encryption, 128-bit and 256-bit AES, trustee privacy and security seals, and we have compliance with the EU Privacy Directive. So all good stuff there. Shawn, let's go into your deployment. Just walk us through it. Tell us what this was like and your experience with Cloudfinder.
Well, Kevin was the one who was tasked with really diving into the product deep, and he actually handled the deployment with the client. Now, I'll tell you, when we went through the initial training, the one part that struck me is the straightforwardness and simplicity with the how to set it up and how to do the deployment. I'll let Kevin comment more to the actual implementation of the client site, but I think he's expressed similar feelings on it. Kevin?
Yeah, it was a trivial setup for Office 365. There are a couple of permissions that you have to grant Cloudfinder in the Office 365 environment. That took maybe 2-3 minutes. And then essentially you're providing Cloudfinder with administrative rights and access into the Office 365 implementation. And from there, it basically just sucked everything out. It was fairly easy to monitor it. The initial backup took, for this particular client, they have very large mailboxes, so the initial backup took a couple of days. But beyond that, I mean, it was a fairly trivial setup.
Yeah, I mean, as with any backup, there's always the initial, and then from there, Cloudfinder actually performs incrementals. So, with each backup, those 3 times a day, you're only capturing the incrementals. So that's a great feature of Cloudfinder. Can you tell? I mean, how insistent was the client on? Were you originally trying to get them onto an Exchange server, and they were insistent on Office 365, or what was that? How did you get into the situation in the first place?
The client's major goals in upgrading their email environment was they're in New Hampshire, and they don't, the electric infrastructure in New Hampshire is not the same as where it might be everywhere else. And so really what really interested them was they were in a very old building as well, and so their primary motivator for wanting Office 365 mailboxes was just the uptime. And so that was their main motivator for wanting to move to Office 365. They had had some email outages prior to our engagement where their email would be down for 3-4 days, and that was just killing their business. Right.
I mean, even at eFolder, I don't know if there have been times where our email has gone down, and we've lost emails. Emails have been misrouted. Things have been sent. Important things have been sent, and they just there was no receiving end. And so in a lot of ways, Cloudfinder captures that information, because whether it's transferred or not, it's going to be captured in that backup. So calendars, all of the important data that you'd want to capture is captured. Yeah, lots to say there. But so Cloudfinder, just a little bit more about the client needs. If you guys could talk us through this, besides the uptime, what else were they really sold on?
Well, just having a backup at all. One of the Office 365 package that they buy is approximately $40 per user per month. I think it's something like that. And so in the past, they've always had an on-premise exchange, which meant they could archive every email forever and ever and ever. And that was one of the things that they were going to have to give up in order to go to Office 365. Once you delete that, after that employee leaves and you delete that user profile out of Office 365, 30 days later, all their mail is gone. It's no longer searchable. It's no longer, retrievable in any way. And although, and they were disappointed about that aspect of Office 365, and that their business practice in the past has always been to retain every email forever. And so Cloudfinder presented us with an opportunity to go back to that client and say, remember that big objection you had when you were moving to Office 365? Well, we have a way to overcome that big objection now. We can give you back, cross-platform search capabilities across every email that gets sent throughout your organization, irrespective of what you do with your Office 365 accounts going forward. And so they're able to minimize the number of licenses that they have to maintain in order to have that functionality.
That's great. That's great. So let's talk about how you actually price and package this offering. We will cover Cloudfinder pricing and packaging, the actual wholesale pricing to partners later in this presentation. But Shawn, if you can comment how you guys approach this, and also if there are any future opportunities that you have coming up. So besides this advertising and media agency, what other clients or what other SaaS applications are you planning on deploying Cloudfinder to?
Well, actually, you were talking about revenue streams before, and one of the things that we found is that we have a software company that we've worked with fairly extensively, and one of their areas of expertise is doing Salesforce customization. And after we got the demonstration of Cloudfinder, I contacted them, and we talked a little about what's involved with backing up Salesforce and what's included. And a company that we're used to giving referrals and business to now has a source where they're giving us referrals to any of the companies they're engaging for Salesforce development. So we were able to open up a whole new revenue stream with that part.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And my understanding is you actually manage the Cloudfinder deployment for your clients, correct?
Correct. Yep. We bundle it into our regular managed services offering. At this point, we haven't been offering this to anybody as a standalone product. So right now, it's for existing clients that are on a managed service agreement, and we're doing other services as well.
Yeah, and that's a growing trend. Is basically we have a lot of partners, especially those who have experienced the pains of break fix, who actually will go into clients and say, these are the services that I'm providing to you, and these are this is the software that I use, and basically command the way the managed services agreement goes, because that's the way that you scale a business. You go into each of the clients and you say, this is the software that I use. These are the services that I provide. Okay, you're not going to do a disaster recovery plan. I'm sorry, this is something that's built into our managed services contract. And so Cloudfinder is definitely one of those products that if you have a client who's using Office 365 and is not backing up their data, but is later going to come to you and complain when something goes missing or a user profile is deleted, that's a great opportunity to introduce Cloudfinder. That's where the conversation should really start.
Well, the fact is, Carlos, with the way managed services is now shifting once again, as things move out to the cloud, to survive as a managed service provider, you really need to start looking at a user-based service plan, as opposed to, when we first went into this, we were doing, the number of machines and servers and things like that. But it really makes more sense going forward with the cloud to start looking at user-based models, because it really doesn't matter if the client server is hosted in the cloud or if it's sitting in their server room. And what people forget is that the thing that really drives work in managed services is users, not machines. And as people move out to Office 365 and that, this is a great add-on in the management of those users and being able to continue to show a value proposition regardless of whether the service is hosted or premise-based.
Yeah, that's a great insight, and I think you're definitely right that that's where MSPs are headed, or that's the trend that they should follow. So good. So we have about 7 minutes here. I'll quickly go through these use cases, but I want to leave just a few minutes for any remaining questions. So some use cases, Office 365 user account is deleted. This is an everyday thing. You can restore a complete user account in Cloudfinder. So not only are you backing up the data, but you can restore everything from the mail, the contacts, the calendar, everything associated, all the files that are stored in OneDrive, everything can be restored. I mentioned this earlier. You have a department that's using Google Apps. You have the rest of the company is using Office 365. You can use Cloudfinder to perform migrations. We back up all this data. We identify, okay, Google Apps calendar, this is the same as the Office 365 calendar, and we basically link that data. So the restoration or any migration plans are seamless. And some partners have built up entire practices out of this, is just migrating clients, because this happens so frequently. Project-specific documents, we have some screenshots here. If you're searching for everything related to London, you can do a search. You're going to see everything that's in Box or Office 365. We also tell you in which application the data is actually in. So in this case, Office 365 OneDrive. So very granular. You can choose to restore or export the data once you found it. And again, you have that granular restore. You can say, I want to restore to this user, or I want to restore to this application. You can do point-in-time restores, so you can go back a month. You have unlimited versioning in Cloudfinder. Something important to mention there. All email messages from a certain time frame. So this is e-discovery purposes. A lot of times the court will mandate that you provide all emails associated with a case. Cloudfinder is great for that. You can pull up all the users and provide that to the court. You can also export the data in a CSV format or in a Word format or whatever format it was saved in. So that's a great feature. Filter. This is just demonstrating filter by user. Maybe it's Anna Smith in this e-discovery that you're actually looking for. All the subject, office party, of course. That's where all the bad things happen. And you're able to see which user, which application it resides in. Receive bill of sales stored on Box. It's been deleted. You want to restore the documents. Easily do this. Just type in bill of sale, and you get all the search, whether it's a PDF or an Excel document or a doc file. Able to see all of this, and able to choose where you actually restore it to. So for anybody on the call who actually wants to try Cloudfinder and play around with the administrative interface, please use these credentials. Play around with it. See how easy it is to do search. See how easy it is to do restore. Cloudfinder.com. The user credential is CFOL demo. That's the username and password. This is a pretty rich demo environment, so you'll be able to explore the functionality. But by all means, have a field day in this account. So let's talk about pricing. Let's talk about pricing and how Cloudfinder is actually delivered to you on a wholesale basis. Basically, Cloudfinder starts at $1.75 per user, and our minimum commitment is 100 users. So it's volume pricing. So as you acquire more user licenses, your price per user will actually go down. So you have unlimited retention, you have all instant full text search, basically all the functionality that we've mentioned today. But pricing is on the screen there for all of you who are asking about how this is actually priced. And just some points of clarification. The big question is, am I paying, if a user has Box and Salesforce, am I paying for one user? In that case, you would be paying for 2 users. So this is by application, so user by application. So maybe you're backing up, this set of users, Office 365, and this set of users, Box, and you have another set of users that's using Office 365 and Box. So each application and each user within that application is how we bill our partners. And then you can mark this up, going into suggested retail pricing. So once you've partnered with eFolder, how do you actually deliver this? Well, that's entirely up to you. There's a few different ways to go about it. Shawn mentioned that he's bundling this into his managed services contracts. Basically, if a client has a cloud application, you're saying, this is a service that we provide. It enables us to back up and search and quickly restore all of your data. The other way is you can provide it as a managed service, $4 per user per month. That's as a standalone service. And then you can also have it unmanaged. So going back to the gentleman's question earlier, you can charge this at $3 per user per month, and maybe you have an administrator within the organization that's actually managing the deployment. So a few different ways to go to market here. If I'm trying to see if there are any questions remaining with the short amount of time that we have left. There is a trial available, so if you reach out to eFolder, we are offering 25. You can speak with a sales representative to unlock an NFR account. So please make sure to reach out to us. Any other questions here? As an individual asked about client encryption keys. At this time, there are no user-owned encryption keys. Cloudfinder is, that's definitely a roadmap feature, but not available at this time. So great. So we're at the top of the hour here. If there are any questions that we didn't answer on the call, please reach out to us. We'll make our best effort to respond to those questions. But otherwise, I want to thank the audience for attending today. Thank you, Shawn, for attending our webinar. We'll be following up with the slides and a recording of this webinar. But thanks again, Shawn and Kevin, for hopping on the call today and giving us your insights.
Thank you, Carlo. Our pleasure.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good day.